Hi Sondangle, welcome back to the channel. H-1B season is here. USCIS has just announced the official H-1B financial year 2027 application timeline, and many of you may be planning to apply for a new H-1B or change of status this year. So this video will be especially useful for new applicants and also for those who are already on H-1B and have questions or confusions about renewals, layoffs, and overall immigration stability. So instead of guessing or relying on mixed information online, I have invited qualified immigration attorney to help us get clear and practical answers. I'm happy to welcome Gabriela from Manifest Law. Gabriela, thank you so much for joining us today. Could you please briefly introduce yourself and the work you do in Manifest Law?
Sure. My name is Gabriela Urizar, and I'm an immigration attorney at Manifest Law. I have almost a decade of experience handling immigration work, specializing in business immigration, work visas, H-1Bs, talent visas, and I work with some of the largest employers in the world.
Thank you. So for everyone watching, just a quick note, you have any immigration related needs, whether it's H-1B filings, transfers, extensions, green card, employer petitions, or long-term planning, I recommend checking out Manifest Law. I've added their link in the video description, and you should also see a QR code on the screen right now that will directly take you to them. As always, this discussion is for general information only. For advice specific to your case, please consult an immigration attorney directly. With that said, let's jump into the question. So Gabriela, USCIS has announced the H-1B 2027 application timeline. So what are the most important things new applicants need to understand right now? Because this is not a regular H-1B season, unlike the last time.
Right. This is a new form, a new way. This is the first time that the H-1B will no longer be just a random lottery. Before, applicants will enter their numbers, their names, and then USCIS will randomly select them. Now it's no longer the case. Now this will be the first year where it will be a new system implemented, which is based on wage level. So for example, if you have for a wage level 4 for the job that you're going to be taking on as an H-1B holder, then you will get 4 entries into the lottery. If you are wage level 3 entries, wage level 2 entries, and then wage level 1, you will only receive 1 entry. So this has a direct impact in the odds because people that have a higher wage will have higher chances of being selected in the lottery.
Okay, understandable. So for people planning to apply H-1B this year, what is the biggest challenge or hidden difficulty they should be prepared for compared to last year?
So this year, I think the biggest challenge is wage level strategy and internal consistency. As many people may be aware, the wage level depends on your role, your educational credentials, and then your location, right? So this would be a good time to have those conversations with the employer and see if maybe makes sense to, instead of working in a very expensive city where your wage level might be lower, maybe makes sense to move to a smaller city. Maybe your company has a branch there, right? Where your same salary may carry a higher wage level and increase your odds of being selected. Another thing that I recommend people who are thinking about applying for the lottery is to start having those conversations with their employers and managers as soon as possible. Don't leave it for the last minute because the lottery just remains open for a few days. So if your name is not included in the lottery by the time it has to be included, then you're not able to participate.
Okay, so location plays an important role this time. Like if you have to take one sentence out of this, right?
Yes, wage level and location.
I mean, yeah. So last year, H-1B registration dropped by almost 27%, and this year, with higher fees, registration may drop even further. Does that automatically mean the people who are going to apply within US has a better chance?
So I'm very happy you bring up that topic because it's a question that a lot of people are asking, right? Historically, we've seen very large IT companies file multiple H-1B registrations for people that were abroad just to have those numbers in place and to have the ability to move their talent around the US, right? Now, when you implement the fee of $100,000 for filing for an H-1B for someone that's outside of the country and doesn't have a visa stamp, companies are going to think twice before sponsoring someone that's abroad. So of course, this would create more space for applicants who are actually physically present in the United States to have a better chance of getting selected in the lottery if you have many numbers of people who are abroad no longer being put into the lottery. However, this will also have another impact that people don't think about. For example, when you have less applicants being registered in the lottery, this means that USCIS is going to be prioritizing higher wage levels, as we know, more wage level, higher entries, and also, better quality of the applications that they're going to be including.
Yeah, that makes sense. So for someone applying for H-1B for the very first time, your most important piece of advice, apart from the location.
I would say do not treat the H-1B as your only option. And I see a lot of foreign nationals making this mistake, especially the ones that are on OPT. From day one, start thinking about plan B, plan C, especially now that immigration has become more complex. If you are pursuing an H-1B application or entering your name in the lottery, great, do that. But at the same time, start thinking about other avenues. For example, H-1B cap exempt, right? Working for a nonprofit, engaged in research. You're not subject to the lottery. You can start working at any time. If you're working for a large corporation that has offices in other parts of the world, start thinking how open you are in maybe going abroad for 1 year and then coming back into the US with an L1, which is an amazing type of visa. Start thinking about as well at the same time, building your portfolio, becoming an expert in your field so that you can position yourself in a good place to apply perhaps for an O1 in a year or two. So start thinking about different plans. Don't rely on the H-1B only.
Okay. And I think this one point we discussed in last podcast also, I just want to bring it in this one. So if you apply for H-1B and in change of status, it is recommended not to leave the US unless that change of status is approved, or else like it will be considered as a banding. So that is one point I just want to highlight in this conversation.
Very
So
important that you say that, because when people apply for an H-1B inside of the US, they forget that they're applying for two things. They're applying for a new H-1B, but they're also applying for either a change of status or extension of status. But if you depart the US when that application is pending, sure, USCIS can approve the H-1B. They can tell you here, approve, you have a new H-1B, but they will deny the change of status or the extension of status part, and they will require you to leave and then activate that H-1B. And as we know right now, availability of visa stamping for H-1Bs is not possible.
and also the 100,000 fees may apply in those scenarios, right?
Likely, yes. USCIS put forth guidance saying that even if you apply inside the US, if USCIS issues the approval as consular notification or processing, that $100,000 fee will apply.
Given the current environment, should existing H-1B holders be concerned about the future renewals and extensions? Because we keep hearing that a lot of layoffs.
In terms of concerns for renewals, I personally don't think there should be a concern. If you have a good position and your position can clearly demonstrate that it requires a minimum of bachelor's degree related, then you're in a good position, right? But I think where most people are seeing a change in mind, especially as the system is becoming more complex and people are not able to stay with the same employer because of the layoffs, is that people don't want to be reliant on an employer anymore, because there is no certainty, there is no security that that employer is going to keep them on the H-1B, and then they have 60 days to find another employer, and it's not a lot of time, right? So a lot of people who are under an H-1B are starting to explore green card applications where they can actually self-sponsor, like the EB-2 NIW or the EB-1A. They don't need an employer, right? If they get fired, they can continue working.
Okay, I mean, in your circle, do you see any increase in H-1B renewals, like the denials are increasing, something like that?
So very interesting that you bring that point, because a few years ago, during the first Trump administration, we saw a huge increase in denials and RFEs for H-1Bs in computer-related occupations, because the government came out with a memorandum saying that to work in a computer or technology field, you didn't really need a bachelor's degree. So that triggered a massive denial and RFE issue. We're not seeing that right now. What we're seeing has increased is a scrutiny in NIWs, for example, right? But in terms of H-1Bs, we haven't seen an increase in denials. especially if the person has already been approved for the same role, the same position. Something that I like to tell my clients is when they're applying for either an extension or a new H-1B, when they're working on the application, it is critical, it is essential for them to come up with a very detailed description of their duties and make them as complex as possible, right? 30 to 40 full sentences. Sometimes I see a paragraph or their duties. Very likely USCIS is going to either issue a request for evidence or deny the case because you're not able to show that your job is so complex that it requires a bachelor's degree.
Okay, makes sense. Like just one or two lines for a paragraph may not convey that like the job is so complex. Okay, make sure. So since you said like in today's job market, if an H-1B holder loses their job, are there any lesser known or smart legal options to stay in US beyond the usual 60-day grace period?
So the first thing that I want to emphasize is that you don't get the 60-day grace period if you depart the US, right? Or if you are abroad and then you get laid off or fired or terminated. It just counts for people who are physically in the US. 60 days may sound like a lot, but it's not. So people do have to think of different resources or avenues. Another one of the ways that people protect themselves is either filing change of status to H-4 if they're married to a spouse that has an H-1B. Also, if they're approaching the 60-day max, grace period, I see people also a good strategy is to file for a B visa change of status here in the U.S. Just make sure that you clarify the intent in the cover letter and you explain that you need more time to wrap up your affairs, to maybe take your children out of school, and finish the lease of your apartment. I do see situations where people are successfully able to move from filing, almost ending on the 60-day period, changing the status to a B visa just to wrap up their affairs. And then they find another employer that's willing to sponsor them and transfer that H-1B. And people have been able to do that, to buy more time. Another possibility is also, looking to go with a cap exempt H-1B employer. That is a great way to also buy time. Or also exploring eligibility for an O-1, or filing a green card application, like I said before, with a category that doesn't require employer sponsoring.
Okay. And I recently read about someone being denied at Abu Dhabi airport, even though they had a stamp in their passport. The issue was that they had transferred to a new employer and had a new I-797 approval notice, but their visa stamp was still tied to the old employer. So is this a common or is this becoming more common at the certain port of entries?
Some of the reports that we've heard is this is happening at airports like pre-clearance airports like Abu Dhabi, and it is becoming more often, but it shouldn't because the law allows entry with a valid visa stamp from another employer if it's in the same category, and then your approval notice with the new employer. But not all ports of entries are well versed with this type of law. So my recommendation would be, of course, carry your valid visa stamp, your new approval notice, hopefully a detailed employment verification letter from the new employer, and you can get this by HR, and also maybe carrying a copy of the immigration regulations that indicate that you're able to use a previously issued H-1B visa stamp with a new employer letter, and the attorney of your employer should be able to write this letter for you so that you're able to present that letter to the airport officials.
Okay. So after changing employers on H-1B or getting a new I-97 approval, after meeting what conditions like a person can assume it is like reasonably safe to travel abroad, and what documents should they have with them to prevent issues at like port of entries like these, like as you said, like the letters and stuff.
Very important that if you change employers, or even if you stay with the same employer but there was an acquisition or a different name of the new approval notice, very important that you ask the immigration attorney that handles your H-1B to write you a letter explaining this. Include the approval notice, the recent one, also the employment verification letter, and I also recommend people to carry pay stubs. Pay stubs from the last 2 to 3 months should be enough, because this demonstrates that you have maintained lawful status because you have been employed, with the proper category. So definitely, carry that with you. But my last piece of guidance would be, don't offer documents, don't offer stuff that you're not asked for, right? Just answer the questions directly of the admitting officer. And if the officer questions you further or ask for further evidence, that's when you provide further evidence. But don't offer that up without the officer first asking for it. Yes. No, I think just wanted to add that, for people to call the airline ahead of boarding, because even though the law, again, like I said, the law allows for people to, for example, to travel with um, documents that have different names. Like, for example, they have one name on their passport, but they have another name on their visa because they got married and they changed their last name. CBP allows this, right? The law allows this. But some airlines are not, like I said, well versed in this law, or they're not familiar, or they're more strict. So always, always make sure to call the airline and ask for the type of documents and restrictions that they have in place so that you're prepared when you're ready to board your plane.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Gabriela. This was like a very good information. Thank you so much,
No
as
problem.
always.